Well, several months ago, my friend Bradley, he said that there's an old homemade trailer that they wanted to get off the property because it's not roadworthy and it's caving in and it's got a tree growing up to it. And anyway, had a colony of bees move into it. So he didn't want to injure the bees in any way, but he did want to get rid of the trailer. So I thought I'd come up here and see if I could get them out. So I got my old friend Andy to help, and we came up and well, I came up by myself first, and I removed a piece of the siding that was just about broken off anyway, just so I could get a better idea of what I was dealing with, you know, to see where the bees were, make sure I knew where they were and how strong they were and that sort of thing. And so once I did, then we came back within a week or so, bringing tools to do the demolition work with. There was a piece of plywood covering up part of the side, and we had to get that out of the way first. Once we got here with our destruction tools, we removed the siding. We had to take a circular saw and cut in between the studs that were on either side of the cavity where they were living, and take off the siding so that all the combs were exposed. Okay. Once we got in there and we could see what we were doing, it had a really good colony of bees up here on the Cumberland Plateau. They get off to a later start because the winter's longer and spring's cooler. But all things considered, they looked very good. The only thing is we found out was that they didn't have a whole lot of honey in storage. They were pretty close to running out of food and starvation, which actually made our job easier, because a lot of times when you're doing this, one of the problems you run into is when you're cutting the combs away and trying to get them into a box, you start having honey dripping and running everywhere, and a lot of bees wind up getting matted down in it and drowning, and it makes it harder to find the queen. But yeah. Anyway, the bees that we shook off of those combs as we were cutting them out, they went back to the combs that were still in place where they'd always been. And so at one point we had a bunch of brood inside these frames and in the box, and you know, there's an incubation temperature the bees have to maintain so that the young larvae don't get chilled. So at one point we took the box and we shoved it right up close underneath all those bees and swept down a good many of them into the box. And the bees won't abandon that brood, so once we swept them in there, most of them were pretty well going to stay there. And then that allowed us to easily continue cutting out combs without injuring the bees. Now, in this particular case, which happens a lot in a mess like this, queen bees can be a little bit shy. They don't like being out in the sunlight. You know, they do their work in dark, hollow cavities, and especially in all that chaos, they seem to be kind of nervous, and they can be really difficult to find. But in the process of sweeping the big mass of bees 2 or 3 times, felt very confident that we did get the queen just because of the way the bees were acting. At some point you could see a lot of them facing the combs that were in the box and sticking their tails up in the air and fanning their wings, which is called scent fanning. And at least we think what they're doing is drawing the aroma of the queen's pheromones underneath their wings, and they were directing it back to the bees still in the trailer to let them know that the queen was in that box. The only real problem here that we could see was that which made it easier to do our job not having any honey. But they were dangerously close to starving. So we went down to Bradley's and got a bag of sugar to pour on the inner cover so that the bees had access to it through the hole in the inner cover. And I knew from previous experience that much sugar and that number of bees, that would keep them from starving to death for roughly a week. So before a week passed, we did come back with some honey that I had in combs that I had salvaged from a hive that died back in the winter. And that was insurance that they weren't going to starve.
3 days ago,
that wasn't a problem.
The colony of bees that's in that box right there used to be in that cavity in the wall of this defunct trailer, which is like out of commission. You can see where the combs were attached to the wall. There's still remnants of beeswax there where they had the combs attached, and then we cut away the siding. You might have seen that already, maybe. Anyway, the bees are in the box. We're going to do a little tidying up here and basically getting them ready to move so that there's less chance of injury to the bees, because the combs in that wall do not fit. I'll show you a frame in case you've never seen one. They don't fit these wooden frames that go into beehives very well. They're very irregular shapes and sizes, so we cut up little chunks of combs. We got them laying in there on wire and wrapped up with wire so they don't fall out. The only problem is they wiggle a little bit right now. The bees will get them attached to the wood so that they don't wiggle, but that probably hadn't happened just in 3 days. And I want to get them attached and centered up underneath the top bar, so that when they're traveling down the road, the combs don't start swinging back and forth, because if they do, they're going to be crushing some bees. So that's the plan here, is what we're going to do today. We want to keep all the combs that we got out that had brood eggs and larvae at different stages, and we got to keep all those in there. But the colony was very close to starvation when we got them. They had just about no honey in storage. And so I brought back a couple of combs that do have honey in them.
Is that what you got there?
But these are both empty. They need some empty space too, because we may be here for a week or 2 weeks or something before I move them, because I want to be sure those combs are attached to the wooden frame. But the 2 combs full of honey would be sufficient to get them by until such time as they can move them. And we'll get them down in the valley. There'll be a lot more stuff blooming than there is here. We're up almost 2,000 feet altitude right now. This is the comb of honey.
Oh, okay. Let me see that.
And
oh, yeah.
Anyway, things bloom about 3 weeks later right here than they do down in the valley. So probably one day next week there's going to be a lot of blackberry bloom down there, because they're just about to open up right now. The other day, I could see they were so low on honey, we went down to the owner's house and got a bag of sugar. And because even though it's inconvenient for them to use it in the granulated form like that, they still prefer that to starving to death.
That's understandable. Yeah.
And so now, what we came here to do. Well, they've already attached some of that comb to the side of the wall. Now what's going on? I'm going to have to stand up. Let's see what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Okay. Oh yeah, that's what we were doing.
Yeah, these are the combs that came out of this cavity right here. There is a small dab of honey right there, which it's good. It's not much, but at least it's something. So I'm going to just lean this thing up right there to get it out of the way for now. And I'll go somewhere else for a while. So this comb here,
That's the same, but it's got more honey in it. I'll tell you what, we'll leave that one if we can. Let's just go ahead and try some of these things and see how they work.
So tell me about those clips.
These clips, as I was saying a while ago, the clips are to keep these pieces of comb that don't fit the frame. They're
not attached to the frame.
Yeah, they're not attached. They're getting that way, but not quite. And I want them to be secure, but I also want them to be inside the boundary of the frame, or the, you know, flush with the edges of the frame. And so this should center them up and hold them in there. They will, once they've had a few days of good weather and getting nectar, they'll have to have the nectar to stimulate their wax glands so that they can attach these combs to the wooden frame. And they've already attached that one somewhat. But Wednesday was a real good, we did this on Tuesday, so Wednesday was a real good day, nectar-wise, had real good weather. Thursday was good up until real late in the afternoon when it finally started raining, and it may not have even rained here. I don't know about that. Okay, so you can see the chain right there, how their bees from that frame are holding legs. Start to say holding hands. They don't have hands. They're holding legs and feet, I guess, to make a chain across, a bridge across from one comb to another. And that is considered to be a good indication that they have a live laying queen and that everything is fine as far as the queen is concerned. So,
when you pull it out like that, what are you looking for?
I'm trying to decide what to do about this piece of comb right here. I think I'm just going to get rid of it since there's nothing in it. But so now I'm going to put it back in there. And that one really does not need a clip, except for maybe right in the middle. That one's bulging this way just a little bit. There's no disease, no sign of any kind of brood disease whatsoever. You know, this is a really good. Okay, there's one we really goofed. See if I can encourage a few of them to vacate the premises so that I can.
So that's one of our combs we put in there, and they attached it to the side instead of the top.
Yeah, we just didn't do a real good job.
Oh yeah, there's one right next to it too.
There's not any brood in there, but there might be. Let's see, let me cut that off there. Let's see what we got.
Oh, that's a mess.
Yeah, there's no brood in it though.
So take that one out.
Yeah. Now I want to comb with this honey over there on that side.
Okay, let's see that.
Comb with old honey.
Okay.
That's not old. It's from last year. There was a colony that that died in the fall, and so at that time they had not yet started eating up their winter store of honey. So I was able to salvage that.
And so we're what, a week later?
It's been at least a week. Might have been two. I'm lost track of time. Anyway, this is like the end of the project here. We, as you can see, we were able to get all the bees out of the hollow wall there. Got them into this beehive, as bad as it looks. And so now, since the owners want to get the bees out of here so they can do away with this trailer, we're going to load it on the truck and take it home here directly.
So what's the temperature? About 50 degrees?
He said 51 degrees, so it's considerably cooler than it was the day that we did all this work. And it's actually cool enough that the bees are not flying right now, which is good, because otherwise we'd have to wait till it's dark before we could do this. Because if you do it while they're flying, then a bunch of them are going to be out somewhere and get left behind. So I didn't really want to wait until dark to do this, so I'm glad it's kind of cool.
But we are, what, just about an hour away from sunset?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm confused about sunset time because we're in the central time zone now, but I think sunset's about 8:30 in the eastern time zone right now. And
Yeah, that's about an hour away.
Alright, so we may get lucky and have a shorter night here.
So what are you doing?
Anyway, I just took the entrance reducer off.
Okay, so now you're covering up the entrance so they can't get out.
So we're going to need something to plug a hole or two. I've probably got some paper or something I can stuff in those holes, but I'm going to get that drill. That'll probably stir them up.
That might stir them up.
Yeah, not much. Okay. Let me get a little paper and there's a couple of places they might be able to get out around this.
So you need the paper to patch up any cracks, or
What'd you say?
these are the frames that we put the comb in. And the reason we left them out is because they didn't have any brood in them. They had very little honey in them. So we replaced them with empty brood comb and 2 combs with honey to feed them, right?
Right.
So now we've got the hive buttoned up.
Let me get this out of the way. We just put this here to keep it in the shade because the sun finally came out. I didn't want it warming up the hive so they'd come flying out, because they weren't flying when we got here.
So now they're buttoned up. Theoretically, they can't get out, and we're going to put them on your truck, and we're going to haul them, what, about 40 miles? To the other side of Sequatchie Valley up on Signal Mountain.
I guess it is probably 40 miles.
And here the bees are in their new home up on top of Signal Mountain, just outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. You can see they're buzzing around, having a good time. And here's what their environment's going to look like.